morning, and from the mid to late morning onwards, expect heavy showers across many central and western parts. Some brighter spells in between. It's quite mild out there this morning. Temperatures actually dipping in some spots this afternoon, feeling fresher in that gusty wind, which will strengthen further tonight. And if you're heading out tonight, be prepared for downpours. There'll be showers across pretty much all parts of the country. The wind's really picking up once more across northwest Scotland. Severe gales likely here. Blustery, gusty old nights. It will help to keep the temperatures up, not quite as mild as last night, but still temperatures well above freezing for the vast majority. A blustery day then to come on Sunday, and again a mixture of sunshine and showers, with the emphasis really on the showers for Wales and southern England. Some heavy ones likely here. Parts of northeast England may not see too many showers until the afternoon, and parts of northeast Scotland and indeed southern Scotland may not see too many showers at all. So it could be a largely dry day here. But elsewhere, expect some showers with brighter, drier spells in between, and temperatures close to average 10 at best in the south. 7 or 8 further north, but again feeling cooler with the blustery conditions. A bit drier on Monday across the south perhaps, but basically as we go through next week, further wet and windy weather to come, and after it turns a little cooler on Monday, mild again after that.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello and welcome. I'm Alastair Stewart, and for the next 2 hours I'll be keeping you company on TV and radio with the stories that really matter across the country. We have plenty coming up, starting with today's strike actions by the rail industry after so much disruption. Is the support still there? And is there still support for the right to strike? And what are the minimum service levels that we've been hearing so much about from the Prime Minister? Here's a question, though. What about simply the right to get to work? With the latest royal revelations and Harry being accused of letting former comrades down just as he let his family down, we'll be discussing that in some detail with those that really know. But first, let's bring you right up to date with all of the day's news. Here's Tatiana Sanchez.
Alastair, thank you. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister is holding crisis talks with the NHS to try to ease the pressure on the health service. The NHS Recovery Forum will see Rishi Sunak discuss 4 critical issues with health experts and other ministers, including social and emergency care. However, he's been warned the talks are unlikely to reverse the current situation, with senior doctors saying the NHS is on a knife edge. In his first speech of the new year, Mr Sunak made reducing waiting lists one of his key pledges before the next election. Well, former Health Secretary Stephen Dorrell told GB News it's important the NHS and the government have a clear view of what they want to achieve.
We can't sort out the health service until we sort out the pay disputes that are currently disrupting the health service. And so there does have to be a plan as to how the government is going to get itself out of the hole it's got itself into on pay. The senior managers of the health service that are coming into Downing Street today, they need to have the pay sorted out. They need the money, but then they need to be allowed the space to do the job.
The RMT says rail companies at the heart of the long-running dispute over pay have made hundreds of millions of pounds in profits. The union claims the money has come from when the government put private train operators on new contracts during the COVID pandemic. It says some companies made £310 million in taxpayer-funded profits between March 2020 and September 2022. It comes as the RMT and 14 train operators walk out over pay, jobs and conditions. In the US, Republican Kevin Murphy has finally been elected as the new Speaker of the House of Representatives. Mr McCarthy was just 1 vote short of victory in the 14th ballot overnight, but he prevailed in the 15th round after making concessions to a fraction of right-wing hardliners. The chamber has not seen that level of congressional dysfunction in over 160 years. A 6-year-old boy who shot and seriously injured a teacher at a primary school in Virginia has been detained by police. Officers say the woman's injuries were initially thought to be life-threatening, but her condition has improved in hospital. The chief police officer said the shooting was not accidental, and the two had had what they called an altercation. It's unclear, though, how the child got hold of the handgun. Ukrainian officials have accused Russia of failing to observe its own ceasefire. The governor of eastern Luhansk said attacks hadn't stopped, and Moscow had sent 14 missiles into Ukraine within the first 3 hours of the ceasefire starting. Kyiv had dismissed President Vladimir Putin's suggestion of a truce over the Orthodox Christmas period as propaganda. Meanwhile, the US has unveiled a new £3 billion package of military aid for Ukraine. MPs have been urged to support paid leave for miscarriage. The proposal by an SNP member would grant 3 days of statutory paid leave to parents who experience a miscarriage before 24 weeks of pregnancy. Angela Crawley says it would give parents the time needed to grieve. Currently, paid bereavement leave is only given following stillbirth after 24 weeks. Prince Harry claims in his memoir his father was jealous of his wife, Meghan. The book, which has already been published early in Spain, suggests the king feared Meghan would, quote, dominate the monarchy and steal the limelight from Charles and Camilla. Harry also says his father told him, "We don't have money to spare," in response to finding out Meghan would stop working after their wedding. Referring back to his military days, Harry says he killed 25 Taliban fighters, a claim which has been criticised by both the army and the Taliban themselves. Historian Anne Whitelock says the response by the military shouldn't be dominating revelations about the palace.
I think that will really get to Harry. I think he's always prided himself on being a military man. He's proud that he had frontline service. And so the fact that he's been rebuked in this way so publicly by the army, I think will come as some surprise to him and be particularly actually devastating.
And flood warnings are now in place across England and Wales as heavy downpours are set to hit the UK overnight. There are 27 flood warnings in place for England, with 6 warnings in place for Wales. The Scottish Environment Protection Agency has issued 6 flood alerts for Scotland. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Alastair Stewart and friends.
Tatiana, thank you very much indeed, and a very good afternoon to all of you. And may I say what a joy it is to be back. For a few weeks, I simply haven't been able to get to work. Now, that prompted our main theme today. If there is a right to strike, to withdraw your labour, isn't there also a right to work? There are developments across the piece this morning on the strike fronts. The Royal College of Nurses say that they need to talk, and they want to talk with ministers, and the NHS, and they suggest that they might just come a little back from their double-digit claim and meet halfway. What's more, junior doctors are poised to ballot on strike action, suggesting that there would be no emergency cover if they get that mandate. And the Prime Minister himself has also said that he wants urgent talks on the ambulance service, which goes from bad to worse on the latest waiting time data. Now, on the railways, there is talk in all of the newspapers this morning of an improved offer to the train drivers, members of ASLEF, from the operating companies, worth, they say, as much as £5,000 a year over 2 years. Now, as the holidays drew to a close, the continuing rail strikes made it clear to many that there wasn't and it wasn't going to be easy simply to get back to work. And in the midst of a cost of living crisis, few, if any, could happily forego their earnings through no fault of their own. Industrial disruption in the health service, of course, can be a matter of life and death. As the country seeks to drag itself out of recession, simply not being able to get to work felt pretty fundamental too. Well, that penny dropped for the Prime Minister too, although protecting our right to work wasn't one of his 5 pledges in that important New Year speech that he delivered. He did, however, acknowledge people's right to strike, but went on to say it shouldn't be done in a way that unreasonably denied people the right to go about their lives. He subsequently let it be known that there would be legislation pretty soon to ensure minimum levels of service in vital public services, including health, transport and education. Employers would be given the right to sue a trade union where this didn't happen. However, the rights of the individual were somewhat less clear from the Prime Minister and indeed other senior ministers who spoke about it. So today we'll discuss his plan with a former Cabinet Minister, John Redwood, and also sitting next to me live in the studio, former Assistant General Secretary of the RMT Train Union. We'll also discuss it with an industrial relations professor. We'll be exploring if the Prime Minister is onto something or will it just make matters worse. Labour's leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says he will oppose the measures, which he says simply won't work. Others say they are an infringement of workers' fundamental rights. It may cloud the atmosphere at next week's Let's Get Real talks with the rail unions, the health workers and indeed members of the Cabinet. We also want to hear what you think about the principles at stake here and how the strikes so far have hit you as an individual or as an employer and indeed a business owner. We know that hospitality has been very bad hit, but what about other sectors? As always, you can email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can get in touch via any of our social media channels, or you can tweet me directly. So I'm delighted to get things underway, first of all, with Steve Headley, former Senior Assistant General Secretary at the RMT Union, regular on this programme, and always welcome back. What the Prime Minister and Grant Shapps have already said about these minimum service levels and dancing around a little the right for others like me to work Is that likely to be welcome in some quarters in the trade union movement, or is it the proverbial red rag to a bull that could rally the troops away from individual disputes towards serious consideration of a general strike?
Well, first of all, I really do hope it comes to a general strike. I hope that is the result. But I have to say, I think we've been here before where trade union bureaucrats have marched people up and down, brought them to the top of the hill, marched them down again. And I think really workers need to start forming strike committees in their unions and across unions, because what we've got here is something qualitatively different. This isn't just making it more difficult for people to go on strike. What this is trying to do is get people to break their own strikes. And you talk about the rights of the individuals, but what they're actually saying is any individual who isn't bullied into going to work can be sacked. That's part of this proposed legislation. And I think it's appalling, and it's a slide into authoritarianism. We've got to see that. I mean, this is a fundamental liberty to withdraw your labour, a human right to withdraw your labour. And what we have here is a slide into an authoritarian regime where that's going to be forbidden.
But as a trade unionist, don't you also recognise in equal measure the right of everybody to work? I mean, the trade union movement have always banged on about unemployment levels and the need to let people get out there and earn a living in any market. You know, it is your fundamental right to sell your labour to the highest bidder and to negotiate a better deal. That's why you come together as trade unionists. I don't have any right like that. I just want to get to work, and I couldn't.
Well, look, I think that you say you don't have a right to get. Well, the solution to that is to join a union. Alastair, you know, that's the... then people can bargain for you.
It wouldn't get me from the closest railway station to my home up to London.
Look, we have a situation where we're told that there's no money for the NHS, there's no money for there's no money for the railway workers, no money for the public services. But what we seem to have an endless pot of money for the war in the Ukraine. We seem to have an endless pot of money to finance the most dysfunctional family, the unelected head of states in this country, also known as the royal family. Why aren't people talking about cutting their money? Why aren't people talking about seriously having options to redistribute that money to where it's needed, into the NHS, into the railway, into public services?
As we talked when you were last in, that makes it crystal clear that for you and for many others out there, this isn't just a cost of living anti-inflation effort. And Mr. Novak, the new General Secretary at the TUC, has made it clear that he is not out of sympathy with what you said at the very, very beginning, coordinating this action. It is aimed at a change of government, a change of attitude, a change of economics. That's what you want deep down, Steve.
Well, look, let's get this very clear. I'm not here representing any trade union. This is my personal point of view. I really wish that the trade union bureaucracy and the people leading these strikes had the similar point of view, but they don't. They quite clearly have got a privileged position in society. They've got big wages, and they don't want to jeopardise them by breaking the law, which is going to be necessary. Sure. If these anti-trade union laws are brought in, workers will have no option but to break them, or that's it, it's game over. If people obey these laws and actually concede to breaking their own strikes, it's game over for the trade union movement. So there's got to be resistance, and that resistance can only be built, I think, amongst rank and file workers.
Because that's something that not even Margaret Thatcher considered all those years ago, as it were, enshrining the need to be a blackleg, as you would call it,
exactly.
And break through.
Exactly.
And you said a moment ago about there is a pot of money there that can be distributed. You will have read it this morning and heard, and you may even have talked to colleagues about it. But a suggestion that the operating companies, not Network Rail, but the operating companies themselves, may have been able to find an improved offer for the train drivers and ASLEF that over 2 years, they say, could be worth as much as £5,000. Is that a clever move? Will RMT scream and shout? Or do you believe that it's an attempt to split your own former union from ASLEF? Because, of course, towards the end of last week, it was joint effort.
Well, look, I think that they're trying to divide and conquer. They're trying to buy off what they see as one of the most powerful grades, which are the drivers' union, which I have to say have had a bit of a history of doing that, being bought off. But fundamentally now, we're not in a crisis of just this inflation crisis. We're in a crisis. We're in a systemic crisis We really are in a systemic crisis. And we need to start talking about the redistribution of wealth. Now, if one union is going to be bought off by being given what is not really a good deal, then that's a great pity. But and I hope the rank and file workers in ASLEF, if that deal is put to them by the leadership, reject that totally. But can I just stress this point? The absolute shambles of a system that we have at the minute. We have train operating companies paying out, and rolling stock companies, which are the people who rent the trains, are paying out, even during the COVID period, over 100 million to their shareholders. Now that money would solve the strike on the railways, you know, and we have to start even those kind of relatively simple reforms.
Sure. And the taxpayer, of course, has chipped in even more.
What makes it ridiculous is that the taxpayer, the government, are giving these companies money. And instead of investing in the railway, instead of paying the staff properly in line with inflation, what they're doing is just giving the money to the shareholders. So in effect, the government are just giving money to the shareholders through a middleman. It's absolutely ridiculous. And people are paying through the teeth for that.
As I said at the very beginning, genuinely, always good to see you, Steve.
Always
Thank you very much indeed for coming in and sharing your thoughts on the detail of what's going on and also the macro picture, the politics and economics of it all. Steve Headley, former Senior Assistant General Secretary at the RMT Rail and Sea Workers Union. I'm delighted to be joined now by Professor Gregor Gall, who's an industrial relations professor at the University of Glasgow. Is this, in your view and your area of academic expertise, a long overdue assertion of the rights of the citizen to work and enjoy a minimum level of public services for which they pay through their taxes?
Well, this proposal was around prior to the 2019 general election. It was in the Conservative Party's manifesto, which obviously the party then won the right to form the government. So it's been rather a long time in coming, and I think it reflects the problems that the current Conservative Party has in office, and then the upping of the ante in terms of industrial action. We're in a very strange position in Britain. There is no right to strike as such. There is no right to strike that's embodied in a constitution. We don't have a constitution. There's no right to strike in a basic law. That contrasts with the situation in countries like France and Spain. What we do have, dating from 1906, the Trade Disputes Act, is the right for unions not to be sued for loss of business by those affected companies. And that's called a legal privilege, it's a legal immunity. So the situation about the right to strike is ambiguous, to say the least. And it's also, I think, that has the parallel, the ambiguity that you talk about the right to work, when, of course, we know that there have been many periods in which unemployment has been very high and many people are not able to work as much as they want. They're on part-time contracts.
Sure.
So this is a more complex situation.
Let me just say to you, as I put to Steve Headley as well, and you mentioned the 1906 legislation. I mean, I'll take you back to Margaret Thatcher, though, that what there is there on the statute book is, as it were, a curbing of the union baron. So if they say we're going to take industrial action, they do have to have a clear mandate, which patently in the current circumstance, both the RMT and ASLEF do have, and the Royal College of Nursing in most areas, they have that as well. And also they precluded secondary action, which is very important in the context of what Steve Headley and I were also talking about, and that is whether this is a red rag to a bull and will prompt action across the board, as he said, perhaps coordinated by a TUC committee. I mean, this is stuff that Margaret Thatcher didn't even consider.
That is absolutely true. What she did do with her government, and then John Major afterwards, was narrow the definition of what a trade dispute is. That is to say that you could only have a dispute with your employer on pay and conditions with your immediate employer, not with any other employers. So there is a step on from that. But I think we're about to enter very dangerous territory here, because if this bill is put to Parliament next week and it winds its way through, and sometime later this year it becomes an act, it's on the statute book, there's going to be a situation where there will be legal challenges, because Britain is a signatory to United Nations conventions and declarations on the right to strike. But also, there's a practical problem. If, for example, the a train company, a train operating company, is able to negotiate an agreement with one of the unions about, say, 30% of staff being available that day, which is an intended strike day for work. The problem is, who are those going to be amongst those 30%? Will some of them then choose to phone in sick in order to avoid going to work and, as Steve Headley says, breaking their own strike? So it's not even clear that the outcome of this would be to, for example, provide 30% of staff on any one strike day.
Yeah, fascinating complications to all of it. But let me put this to you as well. Have the traditional means of resolving these disputes shown themselves to be inadequate, whether it be the pay review boards, the public sector pay review boards, or whether it's ACAS, or whether it's the ever referred to big table, let's get people around the corner. Eventually the government is saying, yes, let's try and do some of that Monday and Tuesday of the coming week. I mean, it seems to me, in all of my years of experience, and I wonder if it is in your case as well, that this has demonstrated that traditional means of seeking industrial peace have gone out the window.
I think there's a large element of truth to that, and it's something that's quite particular and peculiar to Britain. We in Britain have never really had much in the way of arbitration, binding or voluntary arbitration. And in the few cases that remain, there was one on the railways up until 1992. It was abolished prior to privatisation. There's only now arbitration for the police, although there's also the availability of arbitration in the fire service. But outside those few examples, we have a situation where there are no institutions or machinery to solve these issues, short of either workers accepting what they've been given or going on strike. And that is, I think, a deficit in our industrial relations system.
Well, it's certainly time for a rethink. Whether we're having the right rethink at the moment or not remains to be seen. But for the time being, Professor Gregor Gall, Industrial Relations Professor at the University of Glasgow, thank you very much indeed for your time. And I'm delighted now, as promised, to be joined by John Redwood, Conservative Member of Parliament for Wokingham, and of course, former senior member of Conservative cabinets over the years. In your view, John, has the Prime Minister gone far enough in what he said about there is a right to strike, but he didn't say much at all about there is a right to work? There is a right to minimum levels of service. Should he have gone further and protected my right and your right and everybody else's right simply to get to work?
Well, I think that's very difficult. We did amend the law quite a lot in the last century to give people the opportunity not to be bossed around by union bosses, but to go to work if they wanted to. I would be very happy with colleagues to look at any legislative proposals the Prime Minister might wish to bring forward, but I think the delay in bringing them forward shows that it is complicated, and you could make things worse rather than better if you made the wrong proposals.
Yes, I found it quite extraordinary listening to GB News the other day and hearing the Institute of Economic Affairs, hardly melting Liberal daisies, saying that what this government should do is sit down and negotiate. It shouldn't be proposing crazy, unenforceable laws that many in the trade union movement, not unreasonably, as Mr Headley just did, will say this is a fundamental infringement in my rights as a citizen to sell my labour and withdraw it when I'm unhappy.
Well, I think what we need is a productivity revolution in the public services. I've been doing some work on this, setting it out. The dreadful truth is that in the last 25 years, Labour, Conservative coalition governments, productivity in the public services overall has actually dropped over that whole 25-year period. And we've put an awful lot of extra money in. There was a huge increase in public service activity under Labour. There was a further increase in public service activity under the Conservatives. So we need to get more for less or more for more. And I think that means proper engagement by senior managers throughout the public services to get better relations with their staff and employees around deals that provide them with a pay rise for achieving more, working smarter, delivering more quality service. That's what we need. And the ways of doing it are pretty obvious. I think it needs better overall public sector senior management leadership. We're paying many thousands of people six-figure salaries to run these services, and they are simply not delivering the productivity and quality, and they've now upset many of their staff.
Well, I recommend everybody listening and watching our conversation to seek your work out on it, but also have a look at the leader in the Telegraph today, because it makes exactly the same point. So in your view, John Redwood...
Well, I wrote a piece for them the day before stressing all that, so I'm very glad they agree with me.
Well, it's always very, very reassuring to know that. But there is a very profound, and I use the word advisedly, truth in what you say there and in what the Telegraph have printed from you and in their leader today. And that is, there is no doubt in your mind as an experienced senior politician that if a productivity deal could be struck with the rail workers, the health sector workers, whether it's nurses or junior doctors, then there could be more money on the table when they all meet with the Prime Minister and Mr Barclay and the rest of them early next week. It is doable, but they've got to give as well.
I think that's the way forward, and I thought that's what was being said to the railway workers. I think the government rightly is saying we need to get rid of double manning, where the technology allows safe single-person operation of a train. We need to change the maintenance routines. I mean, the physical manual inspection isn't as good as the electronic inspection. It's obviously a lot costlier in terms of manpower. I think it can be linked to a deal which says there won't be compulsory redundancies, but it will affect future recruitment, and it will also mean some redefinition of tasks within the railway. We need a big productivity deal. We also need a timetable revolution, because we're still trying to run a whole load of trains that people don't want to use because people aren't doing 5-day-a-week commuting anymore. So there needs to be a management revolution at the top of the railways, timetables that make sense for modern travel patterns at prices people can afford to get more fare revenue in, and relatively better paid staff should only get more money if they are willing participants in a revolution in the railways, so that it serves the public better and costs the taxpayer less, not more.
John, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. And as I said, I wasn't just being silly. Seek out what he's written on productivity. It does make sense. Telegraph a couple of days ago. You'll find it on social media. And do read the Telegraph leader today, because it underlines it. So John Redwood talking about a revolution at the top of the public services and in negotiation and in productivity. And Steve Headley talking about a revolution perhaps of slightly different order. But I hope both sorts were useful to you, and let us know what you think, either by emailing us or on social media. Now, we have a statement from the TUC which says, when workers democratically vote to strike, they can be forced to work and sacked if they don't. That was wrong, unworkable, and almost certainly illegal. There is an attack on the right to strike. It's an attack on working people. And it's an attack on one of our long-standing British liberties. Our public services are already deep in a staffing crisis, but this government has gone from clapping key workers to threatening them with the sack. If they take lawful action for a pay rise, it will only push more people away from the essential jobs in public services, and that will harm the UK. So that just in from the TUC, who I mentioned in my conversation with Mr Headley as well. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends here on GB News, TV and radio and online. Lots more coming up on today's programme, including we'll be heading down to Devon to speak to our reporter Jeff Moody to find out what the impact those strikes is on the front line, on you down there in the West Country. So give ear to what he has to say, and again, do get in touch with you. But first of all, let's bring you right up to date with the weather that you can expect today and this weekend.
Well, looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking rather windy for some, with a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Here are the details. After rain clears Shetland, much of Scotland will be largely dry to start Saturday afternoon before showers arrive into the west. Winds will be lighter than other areas of the UK. Meanwhile, Northern Ireland will see winds strengthening this afternoon as the showers push through. There will be some sunny spells in between. The showers will eventually reach western areas of England. They could be heavy at times and bring the chance of hail and thunder. For Wales and other western areas, it will feel increasingly fresh this afternoon. Temperatures will be a touch down compared to recent days, with a high of 9 or 10 Celsius. Following this morning's rain, eastern areas of England will experience a drier afternoon with an increasing number of sunny spells. A few showers are still possible and it will remain blustery. East Anglia will see the cloud linger for longest as the rain moves away, but despite the brisk breeze, it will feel slightly milder here when in shelter. Winds will be particularly strong for southern countries of England, with a continuing risk of coastal gales as showers push through, merging at times to form longer periods of rain. These blustery and heavy showers will continue this evening, eventually pushing across to the eastern areas as well. And that's how the weather is shaping up.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens,
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, it's 12:33. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister is holding emergency talks with the NHS to try to ease the pressure on the health service. The NHS Recovery Forum will see Rishi Sunak discuss 4 critical issues with health experts and other ministers, including social and emergency care. However, he's been warned the talks are unlikely to reverse the current situation, with senior doctors saying the NHS is on a knife edge. Mr Sunak has made reducing waiting lists one of his key pledges before the next election. The RMT claims rail companies the government put on new contracts during the COVID pandemic have made hundreds of millions of pounds in profits. The union has said some train operators made £310 million in taxpayer-funded profits between March 2020 and September 2022. It comes as the RMT and 14 train operators walk out over pay, jobs and conditions. Over in the US, Republican Kevin McCarthy has finally been elected as the next Speaker of the House of Representatives. Mr McCarthy was just 1 vote short of victory in the 14th ballot overnight, but he prevailed in the 15th round after making concessions to a fraction of right-wing hardliners. The chamber has not seen that level of congressional dysfunction in over 160 years. And Prince Harry claims in his memoir his father was jealous of his wife Meghan. The book, which has been published early in Spain, suggests the king feared Meghan would, quote, dominate the monarchy and steal the limelight from Charles and Camilla. Referring back to his military days, Harry says he killed 25 Taliban fighters, a claim which has been criticised by both the army and the Taliban themselves. TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Alastair Stewart and friends.
Tatiana, thank you very much indeed. As always on GB News, the People's News channel, it isn't just about the big arguments and the detail of industrial action and workers' rights and the rest of it. It's also about you and the impact that it's having directly on you and your business, perhaps. Well, today's strike has all but brought the rail network across the country to a standstill. The RMT union says more than 40,000 members across Network Rail and 14 train operating companies are taking industrial action. Vast areas of the southwest of England have been left isolated once again after experiencing severe disruption over Christmas and the New Year. So let's touch base now with our West of England reporter, Jeff Moody, who is there and has been throughout the holiday period and knows exactly what is going on in his neck of the woods. Jeff, over to you.
I do indeed, Alastair. Thank you very much. Well, yes, it's the final day of the strike, isn't it, today, after 4 tumultuous weeks. And, of course, a very tumultuous week with 2 RMT strikes, 48 hours each, and, of course, the strike from ASLEF as well on Thursday. A 20% service over most of the country, but unfortunately that doesn't quite translate if you come down to the West Country. If you have a look at the board behind me, there's a few trains on that board, but not that many, and most of them are going east. There's one train that goes to Plymouth, but that's it. And that's really what I've found covering these strikes down in the southwest. On the very first one in Bristol Temple Meads, there were no trains going west, which in effect cut off the whole of Devon and Cornwall. Very often there's no trains going west from Exeter, certainly none going west from Plymouth. So Cornwall has suffered more than any other county in these strikes. Well, earlier on, I spoke to David Davidson from Network Rail, and I asked him why Cornwall suffered so badly.
Essentially, we rely on contingent managers, contingent signallers who are managers who hold the safety critical competency to operate the trains. We only have a small amount of managers, and we just don't have enough managers to cover the whole of the area. We have the Thames Valley Signalling Centre that controls from Paddington to Bristol, and we have a number of managers are focused on that area because that's the area that covers the biggest geographic area, the biggest frequency of train service. Once you get past Bristol, we have a number of smaller locations, signalling locations, and we just don't have enough contingent staff to staff these locations.
So it's the lack of signal workers that's causing the problem in the southwest. Well, there are people on the picket line here today, hopefully for the last time. It does now give the government time to sit down with the rail unions. They're due to do that on Monday. There is a pay offer on the table from ASLEF, and there's also, we're hearing, some sort of negotiation going on about guards on trains, which will please the train unions too. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens, whether that translates into a lack of strikes again, because Mick Lynch has said that these strikes could go on until May. That's not what we need, is it?
Date for it, which is even more worrying. Jeff, thank you very much indeed, not only for today, but also for all of your work over these seemingly endless strikes. Jeff Moody there, live for us at Exeter St David's railway station. An interesting point that some of the points that Jeff was making there about Exeter and the West Country are true elsewhere. For example, if you're trying to get up from Hampshire to London, then the advice and guidance from South West Trains is to look at other big stations like Basingstoke and Winchester, because there are some trains that perhaps are going through there to get up to London, but not from perhaps the nearest railway station. So there's a bit of look around and shop around, but hopefully, as Jeff said there at the end, we may breathe a sigh of relief. It may, for the time being, be all over, and who knows, it may be all over with a bit more money on the table, and as John Redwood said, a bit more productivity as well. We all live in hope. Share your thoughts, share your experiences, share your frustrations as an individual or as a business person. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends, with lots more still to come this afternoon, including a rural campaign that's been launched with the aim of getting us to drink more dairy, milk, and get a B12 vitamin boost. But what does it mean for the dairy industry, which has seen dairy consumption at its lowest and farmers leaving the profession over the last 12 months? We'll be discussing that next, but first, a quick break.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends on GB News TV, radio and online, and thank you very much indeed for so doing. And what's more, thank you very much indeed for getting in touch with your views on the continuing strike action and the big issues at stake there. Viv says, private sector workers can't strike, so why should the public sector? Taxpayers pay their wages, emergency services should never go on strike. Joe joins the argument and says it's worth noting that many in the private sector belong to the same trade unions as in the public sector, yet from experience the support from unions is minimal when there are issues in the private sector. Perhaps it's all too politically driven rather than an equitable service with protection for all, whether you work for the public sector or the private sector. Russ joins in the conversation and says Rishi Sunak's plan to remove people's right to take industrial action is just another step on the road to this country becoming a full-blown dictatorship. At best, it will destroy recruitment. Who would voluntarily put themselves into a situation where they have no rights? So there we are, a range of thoughts and reflecting on what Mr. Headley said and what Mr. Redwood said and my other guests as well. But we really do want to hear your views too. Keep them coming in and I will share more as the programme unfolds before your very eyes and ears. And also, do subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are at GB News, and catch up on what my earlier guests, Labour Relations expert and John Redwood and Steve Headley had to say. I think you'll genuinely find it very interesting, and all of our previous programmes as well. Now, it is that time of the week again for Rural Spotlight. And this week we're focusing on the dairy industry after the Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board launched the, quotes, "We Need to Eat Balanced" campaign, with the focus on encouraging a healthy diet from sources such as red meat and dairy products. Dr. Ranj Singh has urged us to wake up to B12 as part of the campaign. But what does it mean for the dairy industry, which has seen dairy consumption at its lowest and farmers leave the profession over the last 12 months? A pretty bruised and battered sector as things stand right now, which we've tried to reflect on this programme over previous weeks. And I'm delighted to be joined now by Steve Evans, who is a dairy farmer, and there he is. I mean, presumably unadulterated hurrahs from the sector saying, that's good. Here are the grown-ups saying, consume more of our product and it'll make you healthier.
Yes and no. I mean, it's great to see dairy being brought into the public eye and a personality of Dr. Ranj's calibre coming through about the B12. I mean, dairy in particular, there's a number of things. It isn't just the B12, there's the iodine, there's the calcium. It's just a great product. I mean, just coming to your point about leaving the industry, we have faced incredible on-farm inflation in the last year, due to the Ukraine crisis, but globally commodities got out of hand. Our own situation here, we faced a 30% plus increase in cost of production. You are seeing a number of people leaving the industry because of this. It's unsustainable from our point of view. But just coming back to the campaign, this is across all sectors. Like you said, the red meat sector, the importance of eating a balanced diet, and dairy is a key part of that. I mean, our milk literally leaves our farm, goes 5 miles down the road, is turned into some wonderful extra mature cheddar, which is distributed across all retailers. It isn't just milk per se. It's the whole, the yogurts, the cheeses, things like that. So I'm afraid to say, use us or lose us. But there are many farmers making noises about leaving the industry just because the cost of production is horrific. And I'm holding this up here. That's a 1p coin. That's a lovely little brown coin there. And that penny per litre on our milk price to the average UK farmer makes £10,000 of difference. And that is pretty much the difference between staying solvent and not.
Yeah,
penny per litre.
How close have you got to saying, look, I can't make a reasonable living out of this. It's just not worth the pain?
Farmers, we're our own worst enemy in some respects. We are emotionally involved. The sentiment, the long-standing generational businesses that we are, and I'm part of that. And we've taken a long, hard look at our future. My father and mother are still involved in the business, which is great. I'm 44 years old. My oldest son now, who's 23, he's involved in the business as well. And we as a collective, as a family unit, we have very strong on-farm governance, okay? Every pound that's earned is a prisoner, and we do our best to keep hold of it. But it is extremely hard to wake up in the morning with the same confidence when you see the next raft of milk price cuts, which are happening now. There's been a number of announcements on milk price cuts for January, February, March.
And is that, I only interrupt for clarification for those kind enough to be watching and listening our conversation. But that's not the old milk marketing board. That's your direct relationship with the big distributors, overwhelmingly the supermarkets.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, the commodity markets got out of hand a little bit back, sort of 9-12 months ago, and the milk prices are rising, which was great because it meant that all of our inflationary costs were up here, and then our milk price was starting to creep up and up and up and catch up to the milk price. Catch up to the cost of production price.
Yeah.
Now, Obviously, global commodities have slipped away because they've become too expensive. And this is another key point as well. We are not out to make fortunes out of farming. Nobody ever has. This is purely and simply about, right, if we can make a living, quite simple, a living, that's what we aspire to do, you know? Nobody ever gets rich out of farming, despite what certain environmentalists say. Nobody gets rich out of agriculture. This is just about a little bit of parity and fairness and equality. And I understand that the consumer needs value, okay? But we need enough to stay solvent. Now, I made this point to someone yesterday. Excuse me. With these milk price cuts that we're facing on farm, it'll be interesting to see whether the retailer actually drops the price in store.
Yeah.
Or are they going to use that opportunity to make their margin even bigger on the litre of milk, on the kilo of cheese?
Well,
so
let's
it'll be
hope...
interesting to see what happens.
It will be indeed, and you keep in touch with us because we're always happy to talk about the agricultural sector, and we do have our rural spotlight. And I love the point you make about it was your dad's business before, it's now yours, and your son is there waiting in line, hopefully, fingers crossed, to pick it up. So there we are. Drink more milk, make him a happier man, and also make yourself healthier. It's not a bad message this weekend. Steve Evans, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Best to all of you down there on the dairy farm. Now, one of the trickiest aspects of the hospital waiting list crisis is the number of people in hospital who, frankly, simply shouldn't be there. They become bed blockers, and they include people who are well enough to be discharged post their treatment, post the rest of it, if only they could then get the care support that they need out in the community. Now, that's been recognised by the Prime Minister, by the Secretary of State for Health, Steve Barclay, and pretty well everybody else in the industry. But they also include people, believe it or not, like children, increasingly with acute dental problems. To discuss this, I'm delighted to be joined now by Dr. Nilesh Parmar, an award-winning dental surgeon. When I was told these statistics, I was absolutely flabbergasted. These are kids whose dental problems are so severe, and you're listening to someone who can remember being lined up with everybody else at school, having the dental checks and fillings done and all the rest of it. Is it simply that that's gone out of the window and the problems are so profound that for the child's safety, he or she has to go into hospital?
Alastair, thank you very much for having me on and spotlighting this really tragic statistic that came out this week. So the main reason for children between the ages of 5 to 9 to be admitted to hospital is because of dental problems.
Wow.
As you mentioned, many years ago, you'd have a school dentist who would come along and inspect everyone's teeth. That simply doesn't exist anymore. We've seen a huge increase in tooth decay for children. And as you can understand, children are very difficult to treat for dentists. It's hard enough treating a phobic adult. Trying to place a good quality filling in a young child is something which is very tricky and requires a lot of time. It's something which has been getting worse and worse, which has been highlighted by the British Dental Association for many, many years now.
One of the things that the British Dental Association have made crystal clear time and time again, and lots and lots of people listening to the conversation will know it all too well, that to get to a GP is one thing, but to get to an NHS dentist is increasingly difficult because there simply aren't that many there. But a lot of people listening to our chat will say, hang on a minute, this is just about brushing your teeth when you get up in the morning, even if you're a nipper, and brushing them before you go to bed at night, eating fewer sweets and sugary products and all the rest of it. I mean, personal responsibility and parental responsibility is a key part of this as well, isn't it?
Yes, Alice, that's absolutely spot on. So the government, dentists, we can only do so much. But as one colleague of mine puts it, he goes, if the sugary food isn't in the house, that 5 to 9-year-old is not going to get hold of it. There needs to be parental responsibility in terms of what food the children eat, what their attitude is to brushing their teeth, and are they supervised when they brush their teeth. It's not good enough just sending the kids off to brush their teeth. You need to watch them do it. I had a quick look today as to how much a kid's toothbrush is, and you can get a very good kid's toothbrush for £2, and you can actually get kids' toothpaste for £1. So for £3, that would cover you for about 3 months worth of oral health care, minimum oral health care for a child. So there does need to be parental accountability for this.
Absolutely. And I know from our own experience as parents, you can toothbrushes and toothpaste as well that perhaps play to your favourite cartoon character or Avengers or whatever it might be. At least that bit of the industry is trying to make it a bit more fun than it used to be, perhaps, when you and I were nippers.
Correct. Yeah, there's so much online, which many of the toothpaste providers, the toothbrush manufacturers have got free resources. They're pushing this to try and help parents learn how to brush their teeth properly and then disseminate that information to their children. There's so much out there for free. And most dental practices, we have so many toothpaste samples. Come in and see us. We're more than happy to give them to children, especially to try and make it a fun and enjoyable thing. Because if you have to remember that if a young child has to go under general anesthesia to have their teeth taken out, it's very traumatic for them. They wake up, they hardly have any teeth. And then you're putting them down a spiral path of becoming very nervous patients who will avoid seeing the dentist and then having more problems later on in life. So it's something we really need to work on when our patients are young and when the kids are young.
Great to talk to you, Nilesh, and thank you very much for fitting us into your busy weekend. And there we are. Very simple, sound advice and guidance. It's not going to break the bank. There are simple things that you can do, and parents, like all of us, do have that key responsibility. And, hey, the bottom line is if you don't do it, your lovely little nipper might end up in hospital, which is not good for him or her, and certainly not good for someone who is much more seriously ill, waiting for that bed that child will be occupying. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends, with lots more coming up on the programme this afternoon. The newspapers and the media, of course, remain awash with yet further revelations and allegations that have come out following Harry's new memoir, Spare. We'll be discussing all of those next, but first, a quick break.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello and welcome if you've just joined us. The time is 1 o'clock, and you're watching Alastair Stewart and Friends. We are into the second hour of our programme, keeping you company here on TV and radio, with plenty more still to come, including with yet more claims emerging from Prince Harry's book, Spare, inadvertently, accidentally sold early in Spain, and also brief left, right and centre, and big interviews coming up where bits and bobs are mentioned as well. They are emerging from the book, and they include those about fighting and killing members of the Taliban. We'll be discussing the security dimension of all of that, as Prince Harry puts the royal family at risk, some are saying, with those claims. But first, let's bring you right up to date with all the rest of the news today. Here once again is Tatiana.
Alastair, thank you. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister is holding emergency talks with the NHS to try to ease the pressure on the health service. The NHS Recovery Forum will see Rishi Sunak discuss 4 critical issues with health experts and other ministers, including social and emergency care. However, he's been warned the talks are unlikely to reverse the current situation, with senior doctors saying the NHS is on a knife edge. In his first speech of the new year, Mr Sunak made reducing waiting lists one of his key pledges before the next election. Former Health Secretary Stephen Dorrell told GB News it's important the NHS and the government have a clear view of what they want to achieve.
We can't sort out the health service until we sort out the pay disputes that are currently disrupting the health service. And so there does have to be a plan as to how the government is going to get itself out of the hole it's got itself into on pay. The senior managers of the health service that are coming into Downing Street today, they need to have the pay sorted out, they need the money, but then they need to be allowed the space to do the job.
The RMT says rail companies at the heart of the long-running dispute over pay have made hundreds of millions of pounds in profits. The union claims the money has come from when the government put private train operators on new contracts during the COVID pandemic. It says some companies made £310 million in taxpayer-funded profits between March 2020 and September 2022. It comes as the RMT and 14 train operators continue their 48-hour walkout over pay, jobs and conditions. In the US, Republican Kevin McCarthy has finally been elected as the next Speaker of the House of Representatives. Mr McCarthy was just one vote short of victory in the 14th ballot overnight, but he prevailed in the 15th round after making concessions to a fraction of right-wing hardliners. The chamber has not seen that level of congressional dysfunction in over 160 years. Staying in the US, and a 6-year-old boy who shot and seriously injured a teacher at a primary school in Virginia has been detained by police. Officers say the woman's injuries were initially thought to be life-threatening, but her condition has improved in hospital. The chief police officers said the shooting was not accidental and the two had had what they called an altercation. It's unclear, though, how the child got hold of the handgun. Russia says its forces would uphold its self-declared ceasefire in Ukraine until midnight, despite Ukraine dismissing the truce as propaganda. Ukraine has rejected President Putin's ceasefire, designed to give Russian forces the chance to rest and rearm during the Orthodox Christmas period. It says it would continue to try and recapture its land. Meanwhile, Moscow says its defence had only returned artillery fire sent by Ukrainian forces. MPs have been urged to support paid leave for miscarriage. The proposal by an SNP member would grant 3 days of statutory paid leave to parents who experience a miscarriage before 24 weeks of pregnancy. Angela Crawley says it would give parents the time needed to grieve. Currently, paid bereavement leave is only given following stillbirth after 24 weeks. Prince Harry claims in his memoir his father was jealous of his wife Meghan. The book, which has already been published early in Spain, suggests the king feared Meghan would dominate the monarchy and steal the limelight from Charles and Camilla. Harry also says his father told him, "We don't have money to spare," in response to finding out Meghan would stop working after their wedding. Referring back to his military days, Harry says he killed 25 Taliban fighters. That's a claim which has been criticised by both the army and the Taliban themselves. Well, historian Anna Whitelock told GB News the response by the military shouldn't be dominating revelations about the palace.
I think that will really get to Harry. I think he's always prided himself on being a military man. He's proud that he had frontline service. And so the fact that he's been rebuked in this way so publicly by the army, I think will come as some surprise to him and be particularly actually devastating.
Flood warnings are in place across England and Wales as heavy downpours are set to hit the UK overnight. There are 27 flood warnings in place for England, with 6 warnings in place for Wales. The Scottish Environment Protection Agency has issued 6 flood alerts for Scotland. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Alastair Stewart and friends.
Tatiana, thank you very much indeed. A really useful run through there of some of the breaking stories around Prince Harry and the imminent publication of the book and the television interviews. I mean, you pays your money, you gets your newspaper, whichever one it might be. But for those listening to this on radio rather than watching, I'll hold up the Times newspaper for you, where it says, war hero takes aim at Harry over kill claims. And he is not alone in that. Across the whole spectrum, as Tatiana said, there's been furious reaction from the military establishment that's simply not done. And it also yields a serious concern. We'll be talking to a former Marine about that in just a moment, and also a former close protection officer about the security dimension. And there on the Mail as well, Harry faces global fury over Taliban kill claims, so it's not just here. And this one, I think, is utterly intriguing. We'll be talking to a former courtier about it in just a moment. Harry's ambushes harmed the Queen's health in her final weeks and months, as her health was already fading fast. What Harry and Meghan were up to, her close friends have let it be known, they believe made matters even worse for the late Queen. So, as I say, it's a full and rich agenda, and I know from my own social media that we're not just nodding at book sales. It is something that you are concerned about and want us to talk about. So Prince Harry has been sharing more of his own truths, as he puts it, about his relationship with his father and his brother. Also more on his claims that he killed more than 20 Taliban fighters whilst on active service in Afghanistan. Major security issues have been raised by this, and the level of disquiet in the military at all levels is genuinely extraordinary. As I said, we're going to be looking at all of that with those in the know, and at the degree to which he has destroyed all and any of bridges that may have existed to his family, for him or indeed for them to cross to rebuild relationships. Among what my old friend Charles Ray described on GB News as the machine gun fire of allegations, claims and admissions from Prince Harry, either in the TV interviews or the rapid translations of the book accidentally released ahead of time in Spain, comes the claim that Harry had killed more than 20, as he put it, chest-beating Taliban fighters in Afghanistan. The language he used angered the Taliban, hardly surprisingly, and, more importantly, in some respects, security people here said that it posed a serious threat to his own security and to that of other members of his family. It also angered former military comrades of his and many senior military forces. Simply not done, many of them said. It was dangerous and demeaning of the military. And I've just demonstrated the newspapers are again awash with criticisms of Harry from multiple military and security sources. One that particularly caught my eye was Colonel Tim Collins, perhaps the most brutal. Tim says, "The Prince has betrayed the military as he has betrayed his own family." Does a former security chief ask of Harry, who is this idiot? Yes, he does. The Telegraph also reports that friends of the late Queen, as I've just said, have suggested that Harry's antics damaged her failing health. I'm delighted now to be joined by Ben McBean, a Royal Marines veteran who was indeed a colleague of Harry's. And this is what he said about the Duke of Sussex on Twitter this week. I love you, Prince Harry, but you need to shut up. Makes you wonder the people he's hanging around with. If it was good people, somebody by now would have told him to stop. And I'm delighted to say that Ben joins me live now. There he is. Do you still love him?
Yeah. I didn't work with him, by the way. I wasn't a colleague, but I was out there at the same time as him. But yeah, I still think he's a great guy. Yeah.
The thing I find extraordinary about this, and I'm a Royal Air Force brat, so I don't have huge experience of the Army, is that you've got people right across the spectrum. I knew Tim Collins a bit after the first Gulf War, and first, he's full colonel, and there are Marines like yourself, and it's right across the military spectrum who are basically saying, here's a guy who could have been a really top-draw officer, top-draw soldier, just screwing it up in every conceivable respect. Is that your view?
You know what, I mean, he was an Apache pilot, and, if you look at those, the machine that he was flying, it's a massive just fighting machine. And we called them in quite a few times for help. And if you look at that plane itself, the helicopter, you know what their job is. And thank God they were there. And even when I was injured, I was taken back on a Chinook helicopter, and I think they were supported by 2 Apaches. And that's to make sure I get back safe, which saved my life. So when you look at what his job was, obviously any Apache pilots probably killed somebody, because that was their job, to make sure that we get out of there safely. That's why we called them in. So that's why I think people still respect him, including myself, for doing his job. So let's not forget that. However, I don't think revealing the body count was wise, personally. And that's my take on it. I think his job, going to war, and we know what happens in war, foot soldiers do it, people in the sky do it. But revealing certain information, I don't think is wise, and that's what he's done, and that's my take on it. That's why I was saying, I love you and what you've done, and I support you, but revealing the body count and so on, that wasn't a good move, and now there is obviously a backlash off the back of it. That's done him and his family no favours.
The other point in your eloquent tweet that caught our collective eyes was the point about, I don't know who's advising him now, who he's listening to. Who are your prime suspects who are leading this promising young colleague astray?
I don't know. It literally may just be Harry and Meghan having conversations at home, saying their piece, coming up with ideas and stuff. That I'm not there, I don't know. But I just assumed, just my opinion, that they must have like a crew around them. I don't know, but I just think they might have some kind of like team, people like runners and so on and so forth. And for them, it may seem like a good idea to reveal this and to reveal that, and it might sell the book more. But actually, the reality of it is, yes, we're talking about the book, talking about 25 confirmed kills, but all for the wrong reasons. It's not a good thing. So, I think if you kind of sit back and reflect for a second, you might think, actually, I probably shouldn't have said that, but it's too late now. So, yeah, that's why I was saying, if I'm sure he had one of his own friends around him, like, not Brits, I suppose, but one of the lads, if you know what I mean.
You put it perfectly well. Just read the Riot Act, and as Tim Collins brilliantly did. Yeah. Let me put this to you as well. Anyone who served in Afghanistan, and arguably in Iraq, going back that far as well, is potentially vulnerable, because there are forces out there who believe that what we did in both of those countries was wrong, and we know that. We've read it all and we've heard it many, many times before. Has what Harry's been saying and written made you personally, or any of your friends and colleagues, feel more vulnerable to retribution, as it were?
To be honest, no. I can't live my life like that, where I feel like I'm a veteran, so what if someone jumps me in the street? I just live my life, and if it happens, I have to react to it there and then. I think that's the best way to go about it. him saying what he said, I think may have just woken some people up a little bit more on my side or on the, let's say, terrorist side or whatever. They might think, right, let's try and do something. But until something happens, I suppose just get on with your life and see what happens. But yeah, of course, now it's a talking point. Everyone's talking about it. And on my side, I think you should have kept it quiet. On the other side, there's going to be some. There's always one idiot out there who thinks, I want to go and do something now.
Yeah.
It might happen to me. It might happen to someone else. I don't know. But this is exactly why I don't think you kind of reveal these type of things, because there's going to be some kind of fallout off the back of it, whatever that may be.
Let us hope and pray not. Ben, thank you for sharing those thoughts and for your initial tweet. Brilliant. But also for being so open and candid about it. Let's hope he or somebody who knows him is listening to what you just said. And, hey, talk to the right people and listen to them as well. God knows it may not be too late. Ben McBean, Royal Marine veteran, thank you very much indeed for your time and for your contribution to Alastair Stewart and Friends. Really an honour and a pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much indeed. Let's get more now on this with someone who has known Prince Harry, Prince William, and indeed the whole family for a very long time. My good friend Grant Harold, former butler to Princes Harry and William, and a regular on this programme and indeed a regular on GB News. And I'm delighted to say there he is, joining us live now. The one that made me almost fall off my chair this morning when I was trawling through all of the papers was the Telegraph story of people described as close friends of the late Queen saying that Harry and Meghan's antics had worsened her health during those final few weeks and few months. Does that add up to you? Is that a general buzz in either court circles or former court circles?
Good afternoon, Alastair. Thank you for having me on the show. Do you know, I've actually been saying to people recently, with the greatest of respect, I'm glad that our Queen is not here to hear and see this, because I think she would be devastated. I think it would break her heart. So, I mean, obviously her health, as we now know, was declining in recent months. And as you know, the stress of this kind of thing certainly wouldn't help. I'm not going to say that would have sped anything up, but I think it certainly wouldn't have helped. And I think that's what her friends are saying. And I'm even wondering just now myself, thinking about the family, how difficult it is for the King, the Queen Consort, Prince William, and Prince Harry, because maybe part of him's thinking maybe he's gone too far. So I feel, as you know, Alastair, you know all the family well, and I feel for all of them.
You mentioned there in passing the King and the Queen Consort. I mean, they are here and they watch television and they read newspapers, and some of the stuff that Harry has written about what he and William said to the King about Camilla and what they're alleging the King had said about Meghan and her role in joining the royal family. I mean, that is devastating. It's just so thoughtless and so cruel for a man setting out upon one of the most important careers any UK citizen can have, and the woman who is his chosen partner.
Do you know, Alastair, I was there, as you were as well, obviously, from the journalist point of view, but I was there working for the family at that point, and I was there before the wedding, I was there during the wedding and after the wedding, and I can say that at no point was I ever aware of any of those comments. It doesn't mean to say that, you know, obviously conversations do take place. Butlers or household staff are not always around, so it's very possible that this conversation took place, but I was never aware. I saw them as one united family. So that's what I find very confusing with some of these comments. And as you said, the man has just become a king. You know, we've got a coronation in a few months' time, and this is something that there isn't a great time for this kind of thing, but right now is really not, this is not what they need. And I would have thought they really should be kind of supporting, or he should be supporting his father. And I understand, Alice, I have said that if he has truths that he wants to tell and he wants to do this, that's one thing. I think timing is important and how you do that. And also, some things should remain private. And there's things that have come out that I've been reading bits as well. And there's bits I'm thinking, why have you, this, without going into it, and I think you know what I'm talking about, there's things that have been said that are just, there's no need for it to be said. So I'm very confused at the whole thing.
Do you agree with me that he has burnt all of the bridges and scuppered all of the barges, whatever analogy you want to use, that as we look at a picture there of the King, Meghan and the two brothers, after this book, forget Oprah Winfrey and telly interviews, there's no way back.
No, I think, Alastair, I totally agree with you. I think this is the final straw. I mean, people have been trying to draw comparisons with his mother, the late Diana, Princess of Wales. But as you know, she was still part of that family. You know, she would continue to be part of it. This is the first time in, dare I say, centuries, I think a member of the royal family could find themselves not just no longer a member of the royal family, but completely outcast. And it's something that you read in books by Edward III or Edward II, you know, historical things. This is not a modern thing. But I think it's possible because he's becoming a liability. He's becoming too dangerous. And as I said, his truths might have fact in them. I'm not saying that isn't true, but the way what he's doing is damaging his own family. And as you know, the royal family, they have to do everything to protect themselves. And it's possible we could see him once and for all being removed and titles possibly even taken away in order to protect the family from what he's saying.
Grant, always a pleasure to talk to you, and I mean that quite genuinely. Grant Harold there, former Royal Butler to Princes Harry and William, speaking not only with candour but with huge authority. One of the great been there, done it guys, and it's always a pleasure to talk with him. So there we are. You will have your own reflections, and you can let me know what they are by social media or by email. Among many of the claims that have come out this week, the Duke of Sussex went on 2 tours of duty, as I'm sure you know, in Afghanistan, and has revealed in the new memoir, Spare, that he killed more than 20 Taliban fighters and in the interview dismissed them as being chest beaters. By doing that, it has been alleged in many, many quarters, not only military but also security quarters, that Harry has put the royal family's security at risk, including, of course, his own, but perhaps some of you might even say others, and that is even more irresponsible and more important. Joining me now is Di Davis, who is former head of Royal Protection at Scotland Yard. Di, it's always a pleasure to speak to you. Is this got up by security people just putting incendiary stuff out there, or do you genuinely believe, as an expert in this area, that what he said about the Taliban toll has increased the level of risk to him personally and to those closest to him?
Well, you've just answered your own question. Yes, undoubtedly, in my humble opinion of now over 50 years of dealing not only with royals but other factors involving security. I think he has jeopardized himself, his family, and more particularly the royal family at all levels. And that's what concerns me. We know historically from attacks in France, in Germany, in Belgium, how easy and quick various elements, we call them terrorists, they call themselves freedom fighters, God fighters, they can attack without warning. And we have thousands in this country who are not active, but are sympathetic to a terrorist view. And that's what concerns me. And if I was currently in charge of royalty protection, I would be seeking urgent communication with Ravik and others at Scotland Yard to ensure that we highlight the risk, that we consider the risk, and that we cooperate with our intelligence services, who no doubt through GCHQ and other intelligence means, through our friends throughout the world, will be monitoring the chit-chat. That's crucial, because these people do chit-chat, etc.
Yeah. Let me broaden it out slightly, simply because I'm just talking to an incredible guy, Ben, former Royal Marine, who served in Afghanistan and did a celebrated tweet saying, "Harry, I still love you, but shut up," basically, and saying that Harry wasn't only killing Taliban, but also providing close protection to Chinook helicopters when they were ferrying wounded soldiers and comrades out of war zones. And I put it to Ben that there's a distinct possibility here as well that he has raised the security risk to anybody who served in uniform in Afghanistan or even in Iraq for exactly the same reasons.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. But not only that, to the rest of us too. Nobody needs reminding of the Manchester bombings. You know, these criminal idiots are around. And he's had security all his life. And nobody will take away from what he did in terms of active service. But I share what various generals, colonels, you name it. I share my disgust at the language he's used. I also, I have to say, share a disgust about the admission of taking cocaine. Doesn't he realize that those like he who perpetuate this evil trade by buying it, he would have mixed with a criminal buying this, or his friends have, and also smoking cannabis in Kensington Palace in his cottage? It beggars belief that who in their right minds, and that's how we have to question, frankly, what kind of mindset is he in? And like Uncle Andrew, what school of advice did he go to portray this nonsense, in my opinion?
I know there was no consultation between you and Ben, the former Royal Marine, but that was one of the other nub points that he made, is who the hell is he listening to? Who's giving him advice? Because it is crazy, it is crass. And as one senior security source said, and you may well know him or her, what an idiot this man has become.
Well, yes, I actually spoke to the royal editor of the Mail yesterday, and that's the question I asked, and it's a headline in their paper today. I take no pleasure in doing this, but I'm lucky, like you, I have a platform occasionally that I can speak out for the vast majority in this country who want decent royal family, and we've got a decent royal family. But actually subjecting his father, his stepmother, a whole range of people to these insults, to the embarrassment. I have to say, in half a century, I've never known anything like it. The only comparison I can make is Edward VIII. And he turned out to be a traitor to this country, if you know his history. And I'm afraid I'll use that word. He's being traitorous.
Quite extraordinary. Well, you're always welcome here on my programme or on any other outlets on GB News, Di, to share your experience and your thoughts upon it. Final quick one. Have you personally been shocked at the scale and scope of these revelations?
Well, nothing shocks me after all this time, but in one sense, yes. I'm shocked and horrified at the crassness. I'm just horrified that a member of our a family that represents all of us could behave in this way. It just beggars belief, Alastair, and I suppose I am shocked, but I'm so disappointed, I can't tell you.
Beautifully put and sensitively put as well. Di Davis, as I said several times, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for finding time for us this weekend. Di Davis, former head of Royal Protection. We've plenty more still to come on the programme this afternoon. Alastair Stewart and friends. After the break, January is a time for fresh starts and a healthier set of habits. Dry January is one of the most popular New Year's resolutions, and we are 7 days into it. But how hard is it to stick to? And what's the impact on the hospitality sector? We'll be discussing that. But first, quick look at the weather.
Well, looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking rather windy for some, with a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Here are the details. After rain clears Shetland, much of Scotland will be largely dry to start Saturday afternoon before showers arrive into the west. Winds will be lighter than other areas of the UK. Meanwhile, Northern Ireland will see winds strengthening this afternoon as the showers push through. There will be some sunny spells in between. The showers will eventually reach western areas of England. They could be heavy at times and bring the chance of hail and thunder. For Wales and other western areas, it will feel increasingly fresh this afternoon. Temperatures will be a touch down compared to recent days, with a high of 9 or 10 Celsius. Following this morning's rain, eastern areas of England will experience a drier afternoon with an increasing number of sunny spells. A few showers are still possible and it will remain blustery. East Anglia will see the cloud linger for longest as the rain moves away, but despite the brisk breeze, it will feel slightly milder here when in shelter. Winds will be particularly strong for southern countries of England, with a continuing risk of coastal gales as showers push through, merging at times to form longer periods of rain. These blustery and heavy showers will continue this evening, eventually pushing across to the eastern areas as well. And that's how the weather is shaping up.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, it's 1:32. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister is holding emergency talks with the NHS to try to ease the pressure on the health service. The NHS Recovery Forum sees Rishi Sunak discuss 4 critical issues with health experts and other ministers, including social and emergency care. However, he's been warned these talks are unlikely to reverse the situation, with senior doctors saying the NHS is on a knife edge. Mr Sunak has made reducing NHS waiting lists one of his key pledges before the next election. The RMT claims rail companies the government put on new contracts during the COVID pandemic have made hundreds of millions of pounds in profits. The union has said some train operators made £310 million in taxpayer-funded profits between March 2020 and September 2022. It comes as the RMT and 14 train operators continue their walkout over paid jobs and conditions. In the US, Republican Kevin McCarthy has finally been elected as the next Speaker of the House of Representatives. Mr McCarthy was just 1 vote short of victory in the 14th ballot overnight, but he prevailed in the 15th round after making concessions to a fraction of right-wing hardliners. The chamber has not seen that level of congressional dysfunction in over 160 years. And Prince Harry claims in his memoir his father was jealous of his wife Meghan. The book, which has been published early in Spain, suggests the king feared Meghan would dominate the monarchy and steal the limelight from Charles and Camilla. Referring back to his military days, Harry says he killed 25 Taliban fighters, a claim which has been criticised by both the army and the Taliban themselves. TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News. Now it's over to Alastair.
Tatiana, thank you very, very much indeed. Now, there are many reasons that people may be attempting dry January this new year. They may be financial, they may be health-related, or perhaps just out of curiosity. For some, getting through the 31 days will be easy, but for others it may be just a little more challenging. And, of course, what about the hospitality businesses that need support after such a difficult time during COVID and beyond? We mentioned their difficulties in the context of the rail strikes as well. So our North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper has been finding out about an alcohol alternative that may make the next 3.5 weeks a little bit easier for those who fancy dry January.
Shaken, not stirred, and completely non-alcoholic. For those giving dry January a try this new year, could alcohol-free drinking be an alternative way to stay sober for the entire month?
It's really, really important. Rethinking drink is not about abstinence. It's about everyone loves alcohol. I like a drink at weekends, but there's times you can't drink. But it's all about fun. Having fun with your friends when you can't drink and not feeling excluded. So socialisation and different occasions is what it's all about.
People may have a variety of reasons for choosing not to drink this month. Health, money, even just a challenge. But for Smash Drinks, alcohol-free isn't just for January.
Alcohol-free drinking is here to stay, and it's not about 31 days. It absolutely is not about just dry January. We've actually used dry January as a vehicle to get people introduced to alcohol-free drinking. But really, alcohol-free drinking is all the year round, every day of the week for some people, and it should be, every month of the year.
The first dry January took place in 2013 with just 4,000 people participating. Last year, that figure rose to 130,000. And although the numbers continue to rise, just how many of us would stay sober for the full 31 days? We're in dry January. Do you think you could do it?
No. Yeah, I definitely think so. I think, if you put your mind to something, you can achieve anything, really. And it's not that hard, just don't go to the pub. It probably saves some money anyway.
I think I could, but I haven't this year. I've already failed. I could do it. I aren't doing it.
Do you think you could do it?
I hope so, because I'm trying my best to do it.
I don't think so, no. It is much of a social aspect because it's the only time I get to see some of my friends sometimes, so it's a lot easier to go out, drink, be inside somewhere nice and warm.
For many, dry January could be quite a challenge, but alcohol-free may provide an answer.
Sometimes you're getting from work midweek, you're coming from training or whatever, and you fancy having a drink, but you've got to be up early for work in the morning, and it just gives you an alternative to that. Other than a glass of cordial or, a cup of tea or something, it's almost like the real thing without the sort of problems in the morning.
With 3.5 weeks left to go of dry January, some people may complete it and others may not. But at least they all had the bottle to try. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
A brilliant report there from Sophie Reaper, and what a fantastic selection of voices as to why they're trying to do it and why they hope they'll be able to achieve it and what the upside of it is as well. But also, as Sophie and I both said, there is potentially a downside too for the hospitality industry. So let's cross live now to Sophie, who finds herself in a pub in Ramsbottom in Bury. Sophie, over to you. What do the publicans make of dry January?
Well, hello to you, Alastair. Yes, I'm at the Eagle and Child pub in Ramsbottom in Bury today. As we've just been hearing, more and more people are giving dry January a go, and they may have a variety of good reasons for doing so, but one industry who may lose out as a result is the hospitality sector, especially our pubs. Now, pubs haven't had the easiest of rides over the last few years. First, they had to contend with the pandemic, where throughout the lockdowns, many pubs didn't know whether or not they would survive. Now we're dealing with a cost of living crisis where going to a pub and enjoying some food or having a drink with friends may be seen as a luxury. Now, last summer, a report found that there are now less pubs in the UK than ever before on record. There are 7,000 pubs less now than there were in 2012. So in what's already a difficult time, could dry January be making things worse? A little bit earlier, I spoke to the owner of this pub, Will Galley, to find out more about this issue.
There always is a little dip off in January anyway. Dry January definitely does have an impact, but people still come out and have soft drinks. I think less so. People have the perception that if I'm during Dry January, I won't go out to the pub. I think it does help that we serve food here, because coming out for a meal, you can have a soft drink with it, but if it was a wet-led pub or a wet-only pub, going sitting having a soft drink seems a little bit something you wouldn't really do. Non-alcoholic drinks are brilliant because you've got your wide variety of soft drinks, but you've also got your no-alcoholic beer, no Secco, alcohol-free wine, alcohol-free gin. It lets people have the taste of the alcohol, feel part of the group who people are drinking, but not have to be drinking. They can drive, they can do whatever they need to do. But we have a wide variety of soft drinks. The staff don't mind whether you drink or not. It's completely up to you. Come and enjoy the pub atmosphere, and you don't have to have a drink.
Well, as we've just been hearing, there are lots of non-alcoholic options that are available. Mocktails, no Secco. I myself today am enjoying just a nice glass of Coke. Other soft drinks are available, I must add in there. But the message from pubs is that it doesn't matter whether or not you're drinking, whether or not it's Dry January or not, all year round there are these non-alcoholic options that are available. So their message is come down, enjoy the atmosphere and just support our pubs and hospitality industry.
Or perhaps I should say cheers, and thanks to the publican and all of the guests you spoke to with so much wisdom there about the upside of it and also the dangers of it. But there we are. Sophie Riepert reporting and reflecting upon Dry January. I hope you found it helpful and hope you found it useful. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends here on GB News TV and radio and online, with plenty more still to come this afternoon, including, it is of course the new year, which means one thing, January's sales. With many of us looking still for a bargain, I'll be finding out top tips and how to get the best value while staying on a budget. But first, a quick break. We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television and online, across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends here on GB News, TV, radio and online. And thank you very much indeed for so doing. And an even bigger thank you for getting in touch with us in such enormous numbers. Let's share back some of your thoughts now, particularly on Harry. And Perry begins that part of the conversation. Harry proves to be the black sheep of the family, totally alienated. No family member would do or say such scathing things as he does. He has no family loyalty or respect for any of them. Ellie says, seems to me that Harry's downfall was meeting and marrying someone who is only out for herself. Now, Meghan's not here to defend herself, but she has many friends who say that's not fair, and they say it's the family's fault much more than it is either his or hers. However, it's a matter for you to express your own views and we share them. I just put them in context. Ian says, turn it all on its head. When did we last see the happy, carefree Harry? It's a situation of his own making and totally leaves him out of his depth. He says, I think it is all a cry for help. Martin says, as an ex-soldier, I would suggest that he has disgraced himself and the British Army. Harry, under no circumstances, must have his security levels increased or paid for by us, the taxpayers. He can use the millions that Netflix gave him. He claims to be a humanitarian. Life is precious, and life even an enemy's life. You live with that your whole life. Thank you very much indeed. That's a very thoughtful and maybe contentious one, but wow, interesting about the cost of security. Now, what prompted that was several interviews I did with former security chiefs, former Marines who served in Afghanistan alongside Harry. So don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are at GB News, and you can get all of those interviews and indeed previous programmes. I hope and genuinely believe that you will find it all fascinating. So, away from that, and again, thank you very much indeed for getting in touch, time for our regular Saturday savings slot. A report by Price Spy. It's a website that tracks prices across more than 6,000 online retailers has warned that nearly half of products were more expensive in January than 6 months ago. So, how can people make the most of the January sales? Meanwhile, wholesale energy prices, this is the good bit, have actually fallen. Although support for business is being trimmed back, how can businesses cut back on energy use? Indeed, how can we? I am delighted to be joined by a regular on this programme and indeed on GB News, Gemma Bird, the money-saving mum. And there she is. Gemma, great to see you. I mean, first of all, that top bit of the introduction, it's a little bit like Black Friday, isn't it? And it's that famous phrase that we say about everything if you're parting with your money, caveat emptor. Just because it's in a January sale or a Black Friday, Black Monday, it doesn't mean it's the best possible value. How do you check and double check?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. I always say to people, firstly, do you need it or do you want it as well? That's a really good point, because a lot of the time we see the word sale, and that's what companies do. They write big sales, big yellow stickers on everything to catch your eye so you buy it. So always make sure, do you need it or do you want it? And that's absolutely fine to want things. We all want lovely things, but it's making sure you get the best prices for it. So I would say look over the year, especially if it's a particularly expensive item you're looking to buy. For example, say it is a television or something like that that's a bit more than your normal everyday things. Look throughout the year. Don't just go in the Boxing Day sales, January, Black Friday, because as you've said, sometimes different times of the year they're cheaper. Sites like sort of pricerunner.com, Camel on like Amazon and things like that, they track the prices of things. Yeah. So make sure you're having a look so that you're not getting caught, and make sure maybe even at sort of middle of the year, write down exactly what you're thinking of buying this year. So, okay, you want your winter coat's getting a bit tatty. Look at buying that in the summer. Do you get what I mean? Like I always try and buy things myself out of season. So, I always think, right, in the winter months or just when we're coming out of summer, right, I'm going to get my daughter's swimming costume, for example, for next year then, because that's when I find it tends to really, really drop, because companies want to get rid of things. So a lot of things for Christmas would probably be a good time to buy in January, because they want rid of it. They want that stock gone because they want to buy the next thing in. So buying out season, I always think is one of the best ways to save money rather than actually January sales, Black Friday. You can get some good deals, but you have to really know and research the particular item you want.
Yeah, and it's intriguing, as my team would tell you, I'm no expert on the internet at all, quite the opposite, hopeless. But if you just type in I genuinely do need a new phone or a new camera or whatever it might be, and you put in the keyword cheapest, you will get automatically a kind of comparative service, and that is really useful. But I'd just underline your key point there and that is, do you really need it? The answer is, if the issue is energy, the commodity is energy, the answer to that is yes, we do, either to boil an egg or to keep warm when the winter gets worse and worse and worse. Do you sense, as someone who keeps such a close informed eye on all of these things, that we may just have turned a corner on energy prices as the wholesale market sees much, much lower prices than 2, 3, 5, 6 months ago? Are you confident we may have turned a corner?
Oh, well, please God, because something needs to be done. You know, people's wages are not going up this amount. And we're not just talking about people that are on a low wage. We're talking about people across the board, people that are on good wages. You know, some people's homes, they've gone up sort of £600 a month and they were paying £100 a month. So please God, they have. But no one's got a magic crystal ball or a magic wand. I'm probably the same as you and everybody else across the country that, fingers crossed, yes, they have, and they're going to start looking into it, because this cannot continue. Mortgage rates going up, gas and electric going up, food going up, petrol going up. Some people have now an extra £1,000 a month. You're not saying to people, oh, you've got to find an extra £100. Stop buying those coffees every day. Cut back on this. This is really serious now. So I'm praying that, yes, we have turned a slight corner today. Fingers crossed. But obviously, no one's got a crystal ball. But let's hope that it is now starting on a new year. We'll start with a positive. Let's all hope now that the new year is going to bring some luck for everybody.
We keep our fingers crossed, or we say a prayer, whichever you happen to subscribe to. I subscribe to both. Gemma Bird, as I said, it's always a genuine pleasure. Such great wisdom from you. And remember, whether it's a January sale or Black Monday, Friday, do you really need it? That's the key question. Gemma Bird, also known as Money-Saving Mum. Always a pleasure to talk to her. Now, as soaring bills continue to rise, and with no sign of them slowing down, it's not just homes and businesses that are feeling the pinch, but local community services too. And I've been watching a series of reports recently showing that how many local authorities, as they face declining income and real challenges, are beginning to cut back on services across the spectrum. And that is really damaging and limiting the quality of life in those areas, because they just don't have those facilities. But good people, in many instances, are coming to the rescue, which is why I'm absolutely delighted to be joined once again by a good friend of mine, the co-founder of the Beacon Collaborative. It is a philanthropy group, and Kath Dovey is a good friend, as I say, and one of the co-founders of it. We were both engaged in a recent big gathering with the great and the good of the philanthropy world, and a number of issues were raised there. And a number of key services had been identified by some of the most generous men and women in this country to say, that's where I'm going to put my money in, because that needs to be sorted out. Among them were youth centres and youth clubs. And one key contributor who made them his life's work was there, and that's Bill, as you well know, because we all talked together afterwards. The point he was making was that the state isn't doing it now, and he's willing to do it. If it isn't done, it leaves these kids without the chance to learn real skills. It releases them back onto the street and street corners and puts them in real jeopardy. Are we doing enough to coordinate meeting those needs that are emerging as life gets tougher? Or is that something that people like you and your good selves at Beacon don't see as your role?
I think you mentioned right at the beginning there, community. You know, this is about, does your community need a youth centre? And if it does, you know, you can be part of setting that community centre up. You know, that's something that philanthropists, individuals who've got assets that they can contribute, that's something that they can do. And people like Bill, so Bill Holroyd, who runs On-Side Youth Zones, has essentially created a franchise model. So if you want to set up a youth centre in your area, there's an infrastructure in place that can help you to do that. But I suppose the point here is that no amount of philanthropy is going to replace the amount of government, local authority spending that was going into that area. I saw a report recently that said, you know, there's been £1 billion a year spent less, which equates to 760 youth centres across the UK. No individual philanthropist or even group of philanthropists can invest at that scale and bring that service back. But if there's a need in their community, absolutely there are ways that they can get involved, they can support, and they can make that happen for their young people.
Yeah, brilliant, and underline that message because I 100% agree with it. But I remember when you and I first talked about Beacon, one of the things that you stressed to me was that Beacon doesn't exist to point people who have surplus revenue, perhaps huge wealth, at particular areas or individual charities, and we talked about ones that I support in the annual world. I suppose, Beth, I'm just wondering if we need to, whether that core philosophy needs to be rethought, that we need somebody between Beacon and the Charity Commission or whatever it might be, who says, look, here's the emerging need that Gus O'Donnell and Beth Covey have identified, and this is where we need to make an additional effort.
There's a lot of work happening in that area to try and find ways that we can connect donors with the right kind of projects in the places that need them most. And that's the key thing, is that if you're working on your own as a philanthropist, you're very likely to give to things that you see as a need in your area. And that may not actually be where the money's best spent. So this is about trying to triangulate between where the need is, what government's responsibility is, how philanthropy can do something additional, and how do you connect donors who care about that cause, to the right projects that are going to meet that need. Philanthropy can never replace government funding, nor should it. This is not, this is individual capital. What it should do is serve communities, and ideally serve the communities that most need it. And we do need better ways, really, of connecting donors with those projects.
I agree with all of that, and that a very profound bit of movement, I think, in the skill set there of the Beacon Collective. Do go online, find them. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Kath Davey, thank you so much for finding time for us, as always. It's a real pleasure to talk to you there. Kath Davey, co-founder of the Beacon Collective, BEACON. Look them up. It's a great organisation. That, alas, is all that we have time for today, but we will all be back again from 1 p.m. tomorrow, so enjoy the rest of your Saturday and have a lovely evening. See you tomorrow. Bye.
Well, looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking rather windy for some, with a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Here are the details. After rain clears Shetland, much of Scotland will be largely dry to start Saturday afternoon before showers arrive into the west. Winds will be lighter than other areas of the UK. Meanwhile, Northern Ireland will see winds strengthening this afternoon as the showers push through. There will be some sunny spells in between. The showers will eventually reach western areas of England. They could be heavy at times and bring the chance of hail and thunder. For Wales and other western areas, it will feel increasingly fresh this afternoon. Temperatures will be a touch down compared to recent days, with a high of 9 or 10 Celsius.